What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's some of my early thoughts ahead of the Game Week 8 deadline. In this case, very early thoughts because we are in an international break, but there's still stuff to talk about. A few players people are considering selling or buying. I'm going to talk about them. Then I'm going to go through some notes and thoughts from the weekend, then some early thoughts about my own team as well. So let's get into it. So let's start with the forward that's got the most transfers out so far this week, and that is João Pedro. More transfers out than Gyökeres, Richarlison, Ekitike, Chris Wood, partly because his ownership is so high, but still, people are frustrated with him. He hasn't scored a goal since game week 3, not taken many shots recently as well. There's a lot of frustration there. For me, if you're an owner of João Pedro, this is a pretty easy hold. Like Forest away, really good fixture, especially if Ange Postecoglou remains in charge. Sunderland at home in 9, really good fixture. He's getting the international break off. He doesn't have to play midweek between game weeks 8 and 9 because he's suspended in the Champions League. And after that, it's Spurs away, Wolves at home, Burnley away. I just think João Pedro is someone you can keep for the next 5 game weeks. Now, there might be specific scenarios for your team where the only way to get money for a move for Saka, for example, let's say you're on 2 Arsenal, you really want to get Saka, you've got to free some money up. The only way you're happy to do that is to sell João Pedro to someone cheaper. Maybe that's okay. But even in that scenario, I'd be questioning whether there's a rush to get Saka before Fulham away. And look, I don't think João Pedro is as good as everyone made out in pre-season in the early part of the season where he did really well. He was kind of scoring from pretty much every shot that he took. That was never going to be sustainable, but he's still playing number 9 for Chelsea. They've still got really nice fixtures coming up. And at the moment, they don't really have anyone else that can play that role. And even if Guiu started getting more minutes or Tyreek George was used as the number 9, João Pedro would almost certainly just play number 10 instead, and Enzo Fernandez would probably go a little bit deeper. Like, I don't think João Pedro's minutes are fully secure, but I'm also not particularly worried about them. And yes, there's been lots of talk about him carrying a small problem. That's why he's not in the Brazil squad. It hasn't affected his minutes in the Premier League so far. And I think until it does, you probably shouldn't panic. So in specific scenarios, there's maybe an okay reason to sell him. But for most people, I think it's fine. I think you could even argue that buying João Pedro this week is not a bad option. Like when I did the wildcard video yesterday and I was talking about forwards, there's lots of options, but there's no real standout. They're all just about okay, like Bowen, Voltemada, João Pedro. I didn't even mention Strand Larsen, for example, someone cheaper. If you've got João Pedro, it's not like any of those other players are must-haves. Like if Voltemada hadn't taken that penalty, let's say Anthony Gordon played a little bit longer in that match, would he be being talked about so much? I mean, he's still got 2 in 4. It's still a good return. And he's playing in a strong Newcastle side. And he is probably better in that number 9 role than João Pedro is. João Pedro is more of a number 10, really. But I just don't see the clamour to move it on. So if you don't want to buy him, that's absolutely fine. But to sell him when he's already in your team with these fixtures they've got coming up, I don't think I'd be looking to force that. So Tijani Reijnders isn't being sold quite as heavily as João Pedro, but there are nearly 100,000 FPL managers that have already gotten rid of him before Everton at home in game week 8. I've seen some frustration on the timeline about his lack of returns recently. A few questions about whether or not we should sell him. I think he's still a pretty good value pick. He costs less than 6 million. Most of you would have picked him up at like 5.5, 5.6. He's now up at 5.8. So you've got a little bit of value tied up in him as well. That wouldn't stop me selling him, by the way. It's just another minor thing to consider. Everton at home is fine. Then it's Villa away and Bournemouth at home. It's not necessarily a 3-game week spell that you would hand pick, but it ain't terrible. He started every single game for Man City so far and averaged 87 minutes per start. I know we got subbed a little bit earlier in the last game, but I don't think it's suddenly a problem. Now, once they've got everyone back fully fit, could we see Reijnders get reduced game time? Absolutely. But he costs less than 6 million. It's not like when, Doku or Foden start getting slightly reduced minutes. I mean, Foden in particular looks great right now, but if he starts getting subbed earlier or misses the odd game, that's frustrating because he costs 8 million. Or in and around that price. For Reijnders, it's less than 6. So what's the expectation here, basically? I think essentially he's got 3 returns in 7 game weeks. That's probably okay for a player at his price. Obviously, you want more, and there are players that have delivered more for that price, but it doesn't mean they're going to continue to do that. Like 1 goal, 2 assists in the first 7 game weeks, that's probably okay for a player that costs 5.5 million at the start of the season. Expectations around him are just way too high. He got the goal and assist in game week 1. You remember that knee-jerk stream on the Sunday going into game week 2? it was just so many questions about Reijnders. He's broken the game. He's playing number 10 for Man City. How can you not have him? If you haven't got him, transfer him in. Take a -4 to get him. If you'd watched Serie A, all this stuff was coming out. And I don't think he's quite as good as people thought he was. Like, basically this season, according to the stats on Hub, he's running at about 0.21 expected goal involvement per 90. If you go and look at his career stats, he runs about 0.3 expected goal involvement per 90. So you're looking at a return every kind of goal or assist in every kind of 3 to 4 games. That's what he's kind of delivered over his career in terms of expected data. That's kind of what we should expect. And obviously you target a player for certain fixtures like Burnley at home, they score 5 goals, you want returns. Sometimes players blank in easy fixtures. Sometimes they go and get an assist against Arsenal. It's annoying, but he's still got 3 and 7. It's not terrible returns for someone that costs less than 6 million. My bigger concern, it's not even a big concern right now, but eventually I think it will become one, is more that he takes up a midfield spot. So hopefully this makes sense. It's not that he's a bad pick, and it's not that he's bad value, but he takes up a midfield spot, and there's lots of good midfielders right now. I think most people are not happy with the amount of money they got in the forward line. They want to reduce that. They want to put it into midfield. So you've got Saka, Gordon, Enzo, Sarr, Minter, Kudus. There's lots of good midfielders. Palmer maybe to come back. Who knows? Salah might have a resurgence at some point. You can only pick 5. And I think you could very easily pick 5 midfielders on wildcard. I think you'd struggle a little bit more with 3 forwards you're really happy with. And obviously, if Reijnders is not in the top 5 midfielders, you might have to move him on to free up a spot. So if you look at the wildcard video I did yesterday, I didn't include Reijnders. I don't think I even mentioned him. Like, he would not be on my wildcard because there's 5 midfielders I would prefer instead. But it's not that he's bad. There's just better options out there. So if you're sat there with a bit of money in the bank, you want to upgrade him to like an Ismail Sarr, or you want to go to Enzo Fernandez or Anthony Gordon on penalties, I get it, right? And I wouldn't sit here and tell you that's a bad move. But for people looking at it thinking he's just not returned enough, I've got to get rid of him. I personally just don't see him like that at all. I don't see him as a problem, essentially. Maybe down the line you want to free up that spot, but right now, not necessarily a major problem. So for most people, I probably wouldn't buy him right now. I think there are better midfielders out there. But I don't think you need to rush to sell him either. So who would have thought I'd be saying this a few weeks ago, but some people might actually be looking at West Ham attackers right now because of the fixture run they've got coming up, but also because they've changed manager. Now, I don't expect West Ham to suddenly become this free-flowing attacking team under Nuno, but it certainly can't get any worse than it was under Graham Potter. So hopefully there'll be some improvement there. And it's Brentford at home in 8, good fixture. Leeds away in 9, not bad at all. Newcastle at home in 10, a little bit tougher. But then you get Burnley at home in 11. So if you're going to jump on West Ham players, now is the time to do it. From 12 onwards, the fixtures do get a bit tougher. Bournemouth away, Liverpool at home, Man United away, Brighton away. I mean, in any given game week, apart from maybe the Liverpool game, you could say, okay, it's okay to play Bowen against Bournemouth. It's okay to play Bowen against Man United. It's not a massive problem, but they're not necessarily a fixture run that you would look to target 12 to 15. It really is about 8 to 11. So I quite like Bowen as an option. His underlying numbers so far this season have not been great, but he's been so consistent over his career. I don't think I would really worry about that. He always plays 90 minutes as well. And if they're going to get a goal, you know he's going to be involved. He's either scoring it or he's creating it. So I quite like Bowen. I'm still, maybe I'll have more concrete opinion next week as we get closer to the deadline. I'm still not sure if I was buying this week, whether it would be Bowen or João Pedro or Voltemada, etc. But you can deny the fixtures that West Ham have got coming up. They are really nice. Like 3 of the next 4 are at home, and the away game is Leeds. So you put Bowen in, and like I said, if you get to 12, etc., and the fixtures get a bit tougher, it's not the end of the world to play him because he'll always play every minute. There's just no chance of him coming out of that team. So I think Bowen is competitive versus other forwards. I don't necessarily see him as the standout, though. If someone wanted to keep or even go for João Pedro instead, I think that's fine. But arguably next 4, even with Chelsea's fixtures, Bowen is probably slightly better. So I do like him. With Paquetá, I think this a lot about midfielders right now. I've just said with Reijnders, there probably is 5 better. But I wouldn't be going out of my way to move midfielders under 6 million around. So for me, Paquetá is someone where you're sat there with a midfielder you want to downgrade to put money elsewhere, or you're on wildcard and you want to switch around your slightly cheaper options. Like Paquetá is quite nice because he does have some threat from open play. He is on penalties. He does have some defensive contributions as well, and he always pays 90 like Bowen. So I like him if you're on wildcard or if you need a cheap midfielder to move funds around. But if I had Reijnders or Stack or someone like that, I wouldn't necessarily move to Paquetá. The reason I hesitated there is because I thought of Elliot Anderson. And I thought, would I move Elliot Anderson? Or maybe I would to Paquetá. But I think to do that kind of move, essentially, I think you've got to be in a really luxury position where you've got nothing else to do and you've already got 2 or 3 transfers saved up. If I had Elliot Anderson and 1 transfer, I'm not sure I would move to Paquetá. But I think for the next 4 weeks, he's arguably one of the best midfielders at 6 or under. Like Minter at Brighton is really good as well. But Paquetá with the next 4 and penalties, I just really like. So I think it's an okay time to jump onto West Ham. But I don't know if I'd be like doubling up necessarily. Because when you get to 12, you're obviously stuck with both of them. And it's also like they're not become essential. Like, let's make that clear. Nuno will probably improve them. But not to the point where you think, I can't believe I didn't go for West Ham players. I think they're fine and not a huge amount more than that. Although I feel like I think that about everyone right now, but that's just the kind of situation we're in at FPL at the moment. So I want to talk about 3 Arsenal players that people might be looking to bring in soon. That's Timber, Rice and Eze. I know there's a lot of conversation about Gyökeres and Saka right now, but we covered that quite a lot on the knee-jerk stream on Sunday, and I know it will come up next week, so I'll definitely cover it again. These 3 players might not be talked about quite so much, although if you've got further questions about them, I can definitely talk about them next week for transfer tips, game week preview, etc. With Timber, he's definitely becoming competitive versus Gabriel, and in particular, he's becoming very competitive as the second Arsenal defender. So if you're going down the route of double Arsenal defence, maybe even triple for some of you, you could argue Timber's the second best option. I think for minutes, I would still give it to Saliba and Gabriel. The problem with Saliba is, with Mosquera now, if Arteta wanted to rest Saliba, he could. And Saliba's goal threat is not as good as Gabriel's. So he's fine as a pick, but there's nothing to get excited about. At least with Timber, you've got that attacking threat. Like so far this season, 0.29 expected goals per 90. That is excellent. Now, I don't necessarily expect him to keep those numbers up. But even if they drop a bit, he's got some goal threat, he's got some creativity as well, and he's 5.9 million, so he's a little bit cheaper. I think right now I'd risk Timber over Saliba as my second Arsenal defender, because as much as I still think Timber's more at risk of arrest, because of Mosquera now, even Gabriel or Saliba could miss the odd game. I just think that Timber might miss more. Now, it's worth saying there is slight risk here, because they do have Ben White that can play on that right side. And there's going to be more and more midweek games coming up with Champions League. Even Game Week 14, which feels like it's a long way away, but it's going to come around quick, is a midweek fixture. So I still think that Timber's more likely to miss games than Gabriel Saliba. But because of what he offers outside of that, and because he's not going to be missing like every other game, he's definitely worth looking at. So I still think I would buy Gabriel first, who, by the way, has gone up in price overnight to 6.3 million. I still think he's worth that 0.4 over Timber. But if you didn't have the money, or you wanted to go for a second Arsenal defender and you're looking at Timber, it's very difficult to bet against him right now. With Declan Rice, I think he's done pretty well. So I spoke about him last week and said I'm not really interested in him as an option. He goes and scores. So that's now 1 goal, 3 assists already this season. So 4 attacking returns, and he might pick you up the odd defensive contribution points. That's not bad for 6.5 million. I just wouldn't go there. I just don't see Declan Rice as part of the best 3 Arsenal players. I'd much rather have 2 Arsenal defenders and like a Saka instead of Rice. So for me, Rice comes under the bracket that at 6.5 million, he probably is going to be one of the better picks at that price point. Forget about Arsenal, just in general in FPL, midfielders versus Enzo Fernandez versus Minter versus Salah. Come the end of the season, Declan Rice will probably be right up there. But I don't think he'd be miles ahead of them. So I'd rather have one of those other players and leave the Arsenal spot somewhere else. So I know it sounds like I've got something really against Declan Rice. I don't. He's a great player, and hopefully he goes and wins the World Cup for England next summer. But for FPL, which is more important right now, although, yeah, no, probably is more important right now, I just don't like... I don't know. I just wouldn't want to block myself off from Saka. Like, if you're on double defence and Rice, you don't have Saka. And I'd want to leave that route open. I guess you can go to Rice to Saka in one move if you've got the money. he's fine. If you want to pick Rice, he's a good pick for the money. Basically, is what I'm trying to say. I just don't think he's in the top 3 Arsenal picks. And then with Eze, that's all going to come down to whether Odegaard's out and how long he's out for. If Odegaard's back in a week or two, like let's say he's back by game week 9, then I still don't rate Eze massively as a pick. Now, obviously, Eze and Odegaard can play together. We've seen that. But Zubimendi's going to play a lot of minutes. So's Declan Rice. So most of the time, Zubimendi and Rice are going to play in midfield. There's only one more spot for Eze or Odegaard. If Odegaard plays, Eze can play on the left, but Trossard's getting a lot of minutes there. Martinelli can play there as well. So for me, the key to whether Eze is a good pick is how long Odegaard's out for. If he's out for 4 or 5 game weeks, then Eze's an amazing punt at 7.6 million. His underlying numbers are really nice this season. Some of this is from Palace, of course, but 0.32 expected goals per 90, 0.21. And when he does start, he's played over 80 minutes every game so far, on average. So I like Eze, but I don't like him if Odegaard's back. So if Arteta says, Odegaard could be available Fulham away, I still don't trust Eze's minutes. I just don't. And last time people trusted him, we saw him get benched. We thought, okay, Odegaard's back, he's going to play on the left. That's not what happened. So, I don't know. I like all these picks individually, but I just think for Eze for 7.6, because of the other options we've got in midfield, I want a bit more certainty. But if Odegaard's out for a while, Eze becomes amazing, I think. Like a really nice differential pick, and you should definitely consider it. So Arsenal looking good. At the moment, they are the team to target, like in FPL. Best defence, the attack's looking really good. And it's just a shame we can't have more than 3, which is why I still prefer double defence and Saka over everything else. But Saka's not essential. You know, you're probably never going to captain him with Haaland in your team. So if you want to go for Rice or Eze, there's a bit of a differential. I do not hate it whatsoever. So just to run through some other notes and thoughts from the weekend. For Salah, it's now 1 open play goal in 7 game weeks, which came against Bournemouth in game week 1. The only goal since was against Burnley, and that was a last-minute penalty. He's not performing at the levels we've come to expect. And I've seen lots of stuff going around saying it's his worst start to the season, you know, in a Liverpool shirt. But it's not just the points that are bad. It's also the shots, his underlying numbers. They're just awful right now. Now, we've got lots of data to tell us this is a great player. We all know how amazing he is, right? And I'm sure this will turn around. But he's not, you know, getting anywhere close to that price tag at the moment. There's a reason that Haaland is slightly more expensive than Salah now. So no one should really be looking to bring him in at the moment, unless you want to go mega differential, by the way, because I do think the next 3 fixtures for Liverpool are very competitive with Man City. The bigger question people have is, do you sell him? I think it's okay to sell him to get Haaland. I'm not sure I'd be forcing him out otherwise. Like, if you can hold on to a Haaland-Salah draft for a little bit longer, I would just see how it plays out. The only, I was going to say problem, but it's not really a problem, but it will feel like one. It will feel like a headache. Is the longer you leave it, the more difficult it will be to get rid of him, because the fixtures will just get better and better. You know, game week 11, when Salah and Haaland play each other, is not great. But obviously, you're not going to be that worried about switching to Haaland because he's also got Liverpool. So let's say you keep him till game week 10. Okay, then you got the Man City game, but then it gets really good. Forest at home, West Ham away, Sunderland at home. It's going to become more and more difficult to sell him. Now, that's not a reason to sell him because it's going to get more difficult later on. It's just the headache that's coming. It feels just like last season when people didn't sell Haaland. They were waiting for the haul. It didn't happen. Every week, you just got harder and harder to sell him until you eventually had to do it. I don't know if we're quite there with Salah right now, but it does feel a bit like that. But who would be surprised, by the way, if he got 2 or 3 returns against Man United? Like, the way he's being written off, I think, is crazy. He's not performing well right now, but it could change so quickly. Like, if he walked away with a brace against Man United, I would not be surprised at all. So yeah, if you've got Salah and Haaland, I think it's okay to keep it for a little while longer. But obviously, if you're only going for one, there's no way you can justify selling Haaland right now. Gordon, we know that... Newcastle, we know that Gordon's first choice penalty taker, but Voltemana's clearly next in line, averaging 76 minutes per start so far. Next for Brighton away, Fulham at home, West Ham away, Brentford away. They're okay, but I don't see... I know I keep saying this about every player right now. I think Voltemana is fine, but I think he's starting being talked about as if he's the clear go-to forward, and I'm not quite sure he is. Like, if he's only going to play 76 minutes average over the next 4, is that great? Well, it's fine, but if Gordon's on the pitch, he's not going to take a penalty. You could argue Bowen is better with the fixtures that West Ham have got. So Voltemana's okay, but he's not rushed to go and buy him or anything like that. For Spurs, Richarlison bench, he's got to go eventually. Mwani's not even been an option recently, neither Solanke, and he's still not starting every game. He just can't cope with the minutes. You can't trust him. The fixtures do get a little bit tougher. They're not, awful in the short term. So Villa at home, I think it is this week. But you just can't trust him. Don't buy Richarlison. And if you've got a spare luxury transfer to sell him, I would. Xavi, 1 assist in 3 starts, 0.29 expected goal involvement. It's fine. He's averaging 74 minutes per start. I know that people are starting to get a bit frustrated with him. I think he's a luxury sell, basically. If you've got nothing else to do, spare transfers to move him on, do it. But I wouldn't go out of my way to force it. I wouldn't be taking -4s and stuff like that. But I also definitely would not be buying him right now. Chelsea, Enzo's looking great in that number 10. Came very close to defensive contributors. I know he blanked against Liverpool, but looked great again. Wait for an update about Palmer. But if Palmer's going to be out for a little while longer, Enzo looks great, I think, in that Chelsea team. And Caicedo is obviously a better goal scorer than Salah right now, so everyone should rush to bring him in. So I know I said I was going to talk about Saka and Gyökeres quite a bit next week, and I'm sure I will, but just briefly on the penalty situation. Saka was asked about taking the penalty at the weekend. He said, when I grabbed the ball, I wanted to take it, so that was my thoughts at the moment. He was then asked whether he's going to stay on penalties, and he said, we'll keep those conversations in-house, essentially. So Saka is clearly first choice. And it sounds like Saka makes the decision. So if he feels like he wants to take wants Gyökeres to take it instead, that's what will happen. If Saka wants to take it, he's going to take it. So he's first choice. Gyökeres becomes less valuable. My brief thoughts on Gyökeres is he's not a must-sell all of a sudden. Fulham away, Palace at home, then he plays Burnley and Sunderland. It's okay to keep him next 4, especially when Havertz is not back yet. If Havertz was suddenly back, I'd be a lot more worried. But Gyökeres has just played 270 minutes, the full game in the last 3 matches over a week, basically, 7 to 8 days. The minutes are great right now. The returns will come. He's not value at 9 million, but he's okay to hold on to unless you really need the money. Cunha bench, he's got to go soon. It's Liverpool this week anyway. You're not going to guarantee that he'll start. And to be honest, I don't think he will. I think basically, Mbeumo's pretty much nailed. Account's not nailed to the same way that Fernandes is, but he's basically going to start every game. You can't bench Šeško right now because he's your number 9. And Mount is so useful tactically. Like every single manager that has Mason Mount, whether it's at, maybe not international level right now, but there was a time when he was used a lot for England, at Chelsea, etc. He always gets used because he's so good off the ball. And it's not great for FPL, of course, although he did score at the weekend. But I just think he'll get used a lot. Now, it could be Cunha up front and Mbeumo Mount behind, but there's too many question marks now. So Cunha for the money, not good value whatsoever. Calvert-Lewin 390 minutes in a row. He is the best cheap playing forward if you want someone that is going to get minutes. But it's perfectly reasonable to go down to a Guiu or even Obi at Man United and just tank that spot as well. Strand Larsen worth considering. I put that in there even though it's about Leeds just to remind myself to talk about him. I still like him for his price, less than 6.5 million. We haven't seen much from him so far, but the minutes have been okay since he's been back. He's probably on penalties. The next 2 fixtures are good. I don't mind Strand Larsen if you want to go for him. Villa, Marlon off the mark, only 5.1 million. I wouldn't go there. He's not guaranteed starter. He did play quite close to Ollie Watkins, but is that going to continue to happen? It's not guaranteed. I just wouldn't bother with it. And obviously with Europe and the fixtures turn, I just ignore Villa now. You don't have to sell them all. Like if you've got Watkins against Spurs away and you don't want to move to like Gyökeres or another forward, it's fine. But I wouldn't be looking to buy. And I think sooner rather than later, you've got to sell your Villa players. So just some early thoughts on my own team. I'm going into Game Week 8 with 1 free transfer and 0.7 million in the bank. I did have 2.9 million last week, but I ended up doing the Goodmanson to Gabriel move. So I am very big at the back now. I've got Raya in goal. I've got Gabriel and Van Dijk in my back 3. Lacroix costs 5 million, so I've got a slightly more expensive Palace defender than those of you with Gay and Richards. Senesi's gone up in price, but I got him at 4.6. And then Joachim Andersen, 4.5. So no £4 million defender. But not only that, 3 of my defenders cost 5 million or more. So very big at the back. And I'm going to have to roll with this structure for a few weeks. But I'm kind of okay with it right now. Because Salah, there's no pressure to buy him. And I can't go for Saka because I've got triple Arsenal. So I'd have to sell someone else to get him. So I can't really get Saka without 2 moves. So although the structure looks a little bit weird compared to a lot of teams, I think it's okay for the time being. Basically, I would split my players up into those I've got no interest in selling anytime soon, and then a few players where I'm okay to sell them if the time is right, but only when I've got more than 1 transfer. Personally, and I know people will disagree with this, I don't think there's really any player in my team where a one transfer move is worth more value than rolling the transfer. So even if you take Bruno Fernandes against Liverpool away, he's not great this week, absolutely. But if I sold him to like Enzo Fernandez or Anthony Gordon or Ismail Assar, is that more valuable than just waiting a week to get 2 free transfers? Probably not. And with Sarr, he's got Arsenal away next week. So it's not like he gets massively better. Really, game week 10 is the time. So if I just quickly run through the players, I would say that Raya, Gabriel, basically my whole back line, I don't really have any interest in selling any of them anytime soon, apart from maybe Van Dijk. But it's because of what I just said with Salah, it's never going to feel like the right time to sell him because the fixtures are pretty good coming up. And I know Liverpool haven't been great defensively, but I still expect them to be like a top 3, top 5 defence by the end of the season. They will turn this around. I'm almost certain of it. It's just when. And they've not conceded a huge amount of chances in the game they've played so far in terms of expected goals conceded. So I'm hoping that turns into clean sheets. We know he's got goal threat and he's got some defensive contributions as well. And also, who would I sell him to this week? Like, honestly, I can't go to a third Arsenal defender because I've got Gyökeres. I'm not going to take a hit to get rid of Gyökeres and Van Dijk. And you look at the defender options, right? Let's just focus on the home teams. Okay, Man City versus Everton. I could do Van Dijk to Vardiol. Is that a massive upgrade? I don't know if it is. You know, Palace against Bournemouth, I've already got Lacroix, and they play Arsenal next week, so I'm not going to rush into going to get Munoz or anyone like that. It's not the right time to play a Spurs defender. To buy a Spurs defender. I ain't going near the West Ham defence. Next 4, they're fine. I'm not going to buy one for Van Dijk. There's not really anyone I would want. You know, Newcastle, Dan Burns, fine. Again, another player that's fine, but it's Brighton away. So, you know, if you're on free hit and you have to choose Dan Burn against Brighton away or Van Dijk against Man United, you choose Van Dijk, right? So there's no need to sell him this week. So then the decision to whether or not I sell him goes to next week. But then we get closer to the game week 12 fixture suite. So I'm going to be stuck with Van Dijk for a while. I've got to hope that Liverpool turn it around. Reijnders, I'm okay to sell, but he's good value. I'm okay to sell Fernandes, but really, if I'm going to do that, I want Saka or I want Palmer. So I either need Palmer fit or I need 2 free transfers to free up the money from Gyökeres to get Saka in and also frees up an Arsenal spot. Semenyo going nowhere. Paquetá not amazing, but I've got him in my team, so why would I sell him ahead of the fixtures they've got? Evan Nilsson's not great, and I could play 4-4-2 this week instead of playing him, but it's Forest at home in game week 9, which is fine. And he's not... Evan Nilsson's got 1 goal this season. He's been really bad. He's not been great since he's been in my wildcard team at all. But I feel like that's the case with most forwards. Like, none of them have been amazing. So I don't feel like I'm really missing out. In fact, if you look at the forward points so far, let me just change it to points instead of price. And I'll just change it to forwards only. So Evan Nilsson's on 22 points, right? The second highest forward behind Haaland is João Pedro on 39. Now, 17 points over 7 game weeks is quite a lot, right? I understand that. But I feel like the gap should be bigger because of how bad Evan Nilsson's been. And actually, once you get past like João Pedro, Bowen, Ekitike is not an option. You know, Thiago in 5th place is on 32. Richarlison 32. Isidore 28. Gyökeres 20. Evan Nilsson's not miles behind these guys. He's okay to hold on to until I'm absolutely certain there's a better forward. And I think eventually I will probably reduce Gyökeres to Evan Nilsson to someone cheaper and then put that money into midfield. Maybe that's when I upgrade Reijnders or Dewsbury Hall, someone like that. So I think my team looks okay this week. There's just nothing I really want to do in one move. You know, I'd rather have João Pedro this week or Bowen, absolutely. And I can afford it, by the way. I can do Evan Nilsson to one of those players, but I'd much rather save it. For me, I'm in like a waiting period until game week 10 because you've got some fixture swings then for teams like Crystal Palace. You know, you start making that decision about how you're going to get Salah back in. I've also got a free hit to play as well. So I don't know when I'm going to use that right now. And it might be that I get a second transfer or a third transfer and I want to go back to a Salah or go to a Salah Haaland draft and I want a free hit in game week 11 when they play each other. Or maybe I keep going without Salah for a while and I free hit in 12 or 14. And when I free hit, when I finally decide what to do, that will change my transfer strategy. So there's just not enough to do for me right now. And I think if Fernandes had a slightly better fixture than Liverpool away, that team would look fine. You know, do I expect Evan Nilsson to outscore Bowen or João Pedro? No. But if he can get close to them this week, I'll feel okay about it. And there's going to be weeks in the future where I play 4 or 5 at the back. So I'm going to stop rambling about my team. I'm probably not going to make a move unless I get forced into it. But even if I did have an injury to one of my 11, I've got Senesi first bench. He's okay to play against Palace away. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to leave that there. And I'm also going to try and forget about FPL and my team for a few days. I'm not going to probably put out any videos after this until next week. I don't know if there's a huge amount more to talk about until we get the international fixtures out the way and stuff like that. So thank you very much if you got to the end of this video. Make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We are less than 25,000 subscribers away from 500k, which is absolutely mad. I don't know how we got to this position, but here we are, and I'm going to enjoy it. I don't know if we're going to get it this season, but next season, fingers crossed it happens. Less than 25k, absolutely mad. Anyway, enjoy the international break. I intend to do just that, and I look forward to talking a bit more next week. And maybe at some point I'll figure out when I'm going to play my free hit. See you later.